Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar series hosted by the Societies. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that throughout this webinar, you can enter your questions into the Q&A section, and our speakers will address them at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be emailed to all of you after this session. If you have any technical difficulties during the session, please reach out to our support center at 608-273-8080, and I will put that number in the chat, and our team will be able to assist you. So today's webinar is worth one continuing education unit, either professional meetings or professional development, depending on your certification. You must remain on the whole webinar to receive this. It will be posted to your account shortly afterwards. Now I will turn the mic over to Susan Chapman, our Director of Special Projects at the Societies. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar hosted by ASA, CSSA, and SSA, and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I'm Susan Chapman, Director of Special Projects at the Societies. I'll be your host for today's webinar, Inclusive Mentoring, Building Stronger Relationships and Fostering Growth, which is a very timely topic as we'll be launching our mentoring program early in 2025. I want to thank our lead speaker, Dr. Karina Vielma, and our moderator, Dr. Comfort Eta, for their time today. As a side note, if you're new to the Societies, we encourage you to explore your membership benefits in the membership tab of our three websites, agronomy.org, crops.org, and soils.org. Currently, we have about 8,000 members who are scientists, students, practitioners, and early career and industry professionals. So let's get started. Our moderator today is Dr. Comfort Eta. Dr. Comfort Eta is a full professor of education and the associate provost for DEI at Providence College in Rhode Island. She began her career as an agronomist in Cameroon, earned a PhD in agronomy from UW-Madison, and completed postdoctoral work at UC Davis. She later transitioned to science education, actively engaging in agronomy to enhance K-12 education. Comfort also focuses on DEI initiatives and leads professional development for the ASA, CSSA, and SSA DEI committee. Dr. Eta, I will pass the mic off to you to introduce Dr. Vielma and get us started.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited here to introduce our speaker for this session, Dr. Karina I. Vielma, who was the first in her family to attend and graduate from college. She began her higher education career at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, where she was many times the only woman and Latina in her courses. Because of her experiences as a student at MIT, she decided to dedicate her career to helping answer tough questions about inclusion for undergraduates, underrepresented students in engineering, science, and mathematics. For these reasons, she went on to pursue higher education degrees at Harvard University and the University of Texas at San Antonio. She worked in university administrative roles and as an educator for public schools. Now as assistant professor of engineering education at the University of Texas at San Antonio, she designs workshops and courses aimed to prepare engineering faculty and graduate students to teach using student-centered, research-based practices that develop positive student identities and self-efficacy. Her research seeks to find ways to positively learn from the experiences of low-income and first-generation college students in engineering that translate to structural changes in engineering education pathways. Now join me to welcome our speaker for this session, Dr. Karina Vielma. Over to you, Dr. Vielma.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I am honored to speak to you today about mentoring. This is a topic that holds both personal significance and also is central to the research that I conduct in engineering education. and STEM education. And the research that I'm going to talk to you about also builds on a National Science Foundation grant on inclusive mentoring that um, a consortium of universities received and that I am a part of. And so I want to talk to you today about this important topic. We know from industry and from business research that there's a positive correlation between mentorship and career advancement, as well as increased productivity. Employees, for example, who participate in mentoring programs are 5 times more likely to be promoted than those that do not have mentors. 71% of people with mentors report that their organization provides opportunities for career advancement in comparison to 47% of people who don't have mentors. And 70% of businesses report increased productivity due to mentoring initiatives. So we know that industries and organizations benefit from mentoring. And so we try to bring the inclusive mentoring into all spaces, and we understand that they differ. And so for this talk, I've familiarized myself with your organization's mission and visions, and this mentoring initiative is going to be a valuable strategy to help advance the organization's goals and unlock the potential of the whole person. And so throughout the presentation, I will use also inclusive mentoring interchangeably with holistic mentoring, because we will be seeking to focus on the person as a whole. And so first, let me start with a land acknowledgement. I am coming to you today, I'm speaking to you from San Antonio, Texas. This is the traditional territory of the Payaya people and other bands of the Tepe, Pailam, Coahuiltecan Nation, including the Pacoa, Borrado, Pacawan, Pagame, Papanak nations. This land, known as Yanaguana, or Land of the Spirit Waters, in the Payaya language, has been home to indigenous peoples for thousands of years. We also recognize other indigenous groups with historical ties to this area, including Tankawa, Lipan, Pachi, and Kickapoo. And so I want to start by telling you just a little bit about me. As mentioned in the introduction, I am a first-generation college student. I was the first in my family to attend the university. My parents are both immigrants to the U.S. I was the first-born child here in the state of Texas, actually, and I grew up in poverty. I was the eldest of 5 children, and so I was brought up to be a role model to my brothers and sisters. And in growing up, I explored nature. I loved following ants around and looking at leaves, and just I was amazed by nature and the patterns that nature afforded. And with that curiosity, I became very interested in math and science. And unknowingly, I was preparing to become a scientist at a very young age. And here in this picture, in this slide, you see that there are many different mentors that I had. On the top right picture, let me see if I can point to it. Right here, here am I. I hope you can see my mouse. And these are my brothers and sisters. And I have a counselor who helped me learn about college and attend college as well. And then I also have my mentor at MIT, Dr. Sipser, that he also is a very critical formal mentor in my development, my formation as a scientist. And then you see others here, friends from school who are peer mentors informally, and some formal mentors also in my doctoral degree and in my professional degree, Dr. Carl Reed, Dr. Encarnacion Garza, Dr. Joanne Browning. And you'll see here that I am the result of not just my efforts and the education and the mentors, but also all the people that helped to build me in the process. And so with this, we know that we all have mentors who have guided us and who have walked us through our own growth. So this is important to understand, that we can have a network of mentors at various stages and seek new mentors in new endeavors. And so I want to start off by asking you a question uh, about being a mentor. Have you served as a mentor? And I can assure you that perhaps in a formal or informal way you have. And so for that, I want to say thank you for being a mentor. You have at some point in somebody's life helped shape their experiences. And so the next question is, have you benefited from a mentor relationship? So this question is also very important because we all benefit in different ways. And so I want to continue this conversation, this online virtual conversation, by asking you what, if you think of that a mentor that you have benefited from having a relationship with, uh, what are the attributes of this mentor? So if you'll join me in this QR code, if you'll join this, it's a Menti uh, questionnaire, and just tell me, what are the attributes of a good mentor? And let me just make sure that it's live. It should be. You can scan it with your phone. And it'll take you to the Mentimeter. You can enter words for the attributes of this mentor. And so I'll pause for just a few minutes to allow people to scan the QR code and enter some words to describe this mentor that they benefited from. So this is our collective word cloud that we're seeing contributions for. So thank you to those who are contributing. If you would like, you can also use this QR code here. It's showing up kind of small on the screen, but you can see that as the more words that are used, so good listener is one of the words that has been used most often, empathetic as well, encouraging, kind, flexible, experienced. Thank you to those that are participating. And so you can see how these are all important attributes of a good mentor. And in our research, we have found some important elements that contribute to a positive mentorship experience for proteges. So you can continue to enter your responses, and I am going to continue. Thank you again for your participation. And so holistic mentoring is defined as a multifaceted and reciprocal relationship. There are several facets that it entails. A mentor engages proteges from diverse backgrounds to advance their goals. So it doesn't mean that it's only my background, but it can be anybody from diverse backgrounds. And the mentor engages the proteges to learn from their professional development experiences. Mentors and proteges both work together. They collaborate toward a better future by engaging in a virtuous cycle of learning. This is a very ethical role. And there's also a focus on the holistic growth of the individual. So this is also a very important piece of the puzzle. And why is inclusive mentoring so important? There are structural inequalities that stand on as barriers, excluding many people from science, technology, engineering, and math, so the STEM fields. And we now know that inclusive mentoring and mentoring that openly acknowledges the protege's identity helps break down some of these barriers and makes historical trends and hidden curricula visible and overcomable. And it's the right thing to do. Everybody deserves a chance to be successful in their chosen fields. We know that diverse teams also create better, safer solutions for everyone and not just for those that are involved. We also know that discrimination harms everyone, including dominant groups. So we want to think about being inclusive of all people when we mentor, especially when we are formal mentors. So both mentors and mentees need to learn several skills to counteract and undo these injustices that, or inequalities, I should say, that we have historically been a part of in these fields. And so what is it that inclusive mentors do? Inclusive mentors advance the goals of their proteges. So it's a very goal-oriented task, a very goal-oriented relationship. They guide the discovery of intellectual passions. They provide advice and access to resources. They advocate and sponsor proteges. I want to just speak real briefly here because I think this is important. When the protege is not in the room, this is a great time to talk them up, to talk well about them, about their skills and their contributions, and this is very important in the mentorship relationships. It is also inclusive mentors also respectfully acknowledge the protege's identities. They are humble about their own identities as well, and they validate the backgrounds and accomplishments of the protege. And lastly, and also very importantly, is that they provide supportive environments that prevent isolation by promoting cultural awareness and sensitivity. And our research has centered on inclusive mentoring and has led to us incorporating trainings for mentors at different stages throughout the STEM educational pathways, including undergraduate research, mentorship at national laboratories, institutions of higher education, and community colleges. So this is important for us to understand what it is that inclusive mentors do. So personally, I have a vision for mentoring, and that is that every person receives holistic mentoring that fosters healthy growth. And I say healthy growth because as your discipline, as those of you know, within your discipline, there is such a thing as unhealthy growth. And so having holistic mentoring can include challenges, it can include barriers and obstacles, but that doesn't mean that those are going to prevent the mentees from continuing. It also includes successes and celebrations. And so if we look at this, it's a two-dimensional dodecahedron, right? If we folded it up, it would become this nice polygon. These are the holistic mentoring facets, and our team has, through our research, developed an activity around this where we discuss this dodecahedron. And on the left side, we have some of the traditional facets of mentoring. What we have uncovered from the research as having this the history in the past was very much a dyadic framework of a single mentor-mentee pair. And usually there was a hierarchical structure. The mentor was typically the senior person in the relationship. The mentee was the junior person, and the senior person usually was the person that gave knowledge and advice, wisdom, passed on their wisdom to the protege. So those are the facets on the left side. So that you see here on the dodecahedron. And in traditional mentorship, we also know that the junior person was the beneficiary of the relationship, and usually there was no end date, so this mentorship could continue. And now in this more modern approaches to mentorship, we know that there has been evolutions, and so on the right side you see some of the more holistic facets of mentoring. And they emphasize the importance of cultivating a diverse array of relationships that contribute to task completion, for example, career development, personal development. And so you can see here, motivate, mitigate, validate, advance, belong, relate. These are some more of the modern approaches that are taken in holistic mentoring. And we know that the world is increasingly more interdisciplinary. It is very rapidly changing. We need to have a variety of mentors to help us help bridge silos, help build bridges, right, to bridge silos, and introduce us to new systems and perspectives that we don't have, and that we are able to help mentors understand our discipline. So it's a two-way street. And also, we want to foster mutual learning. So we want to develop a network of mentors, and this is also an important piece of cultivating our network and also our growth. So other things to consider with a network of mentors is that we can develop a more comprehensive understanding of very complex issues, and the innovation that comes from our solutions and our research, it often occurs at the intersection of disciplines. And so being able to draw from mentors from different disciplines and different areas can help us to spark more innovation. And also, as professionals, we need to develop a broad set of skills that can help us remain competitive and help us to continue to grow in different areas. So our mentor system should continuously be evolving. We should think about ways to incorporate knowledge from mentors and include others from different institutions, different cultures, different methodologies. This is going to be key to fostering our mentor networks. And another thing to consider is that a mentoring relationship has different stages. And here are four main phases that we know are important. And in the table, you see on the left the phase, and then on the right, some considerations as a mentor. What are some things that I should consider as a mentor? So for example, in the selection phase or in the initiation phase, this is where the mentor and mentee get to know each other. They establish a rapport. They discuss goals and expectations. They determine if it's a good fit to work together. They might build boundaries, and so that pulls into the alignment as well. But I want to emphasize that in the selection, as a mentor, I want to think about how many mentors can I take on? how much time do I have as a mentor, and what is the purpose and function of the mentoring relationship? Am I capable to do this? A lot of times, we might take on too many mentoring relationships, and that can be detrimental to both us on our time, and also as mentors, and also our proteges. So we want to make sure that we have some time um, to dedicate to the relationship. And then when it comes to alignment, it's going to be important to understand the protege's background, their set of skills, the expectations. What is it that they want out of the relationship? What is it that they're looking to build? And also, part of the expectations includes the communication. How will we communicate? When will we communicate? What are the goals? What milestones do you want to reach? If it's a student, for example, do they want help with the graduation process? Especially if first generation college students, they might need some guidance in that area. If it's a graduate student, they might want to have help with publications. And so, how often will you communicate with publications? Will you be able to read drafts, or do you want to see a final draft or a near final draft? What are some of those expectations? And this is a very critical piece to set expectations early on and to be able to communicate those. And it doesn't mean that you can't come back to them and change them, but this is a good place to talk about them and make sure that everyone will benefit from the relationship. During this phase in particular, the mentor often takes the lead, um, you know, guiding to draw from the mentee or the protege. What is it that you need? What is it that I can help you with? In the cultivation phase, this is the main working phase of the mentorship. This is where now you have regular meetings, you have regular communication, you progress towards the goals, and you check off milestones. You are checking on the protege. You're making sure that they have the resources that they need, and this is also where, oh, excuse me, sorry, where independence is fostered. And this is also a good point to think about how you can, as a mentor, sponsor and advocate for a mentee. So this is also a very important phase, the cultivation phase. And during the last phase, which is the closure phase, this phase is where we celebrate successes. We might share lessons learned, but then we have a redefinition period of the relationship. What is going to happen? So, for example, you have a graduate student who's a PhD student, and now they went from calling you doctor to now, your colleagues. And so, what is that going to look like? And there might be ways to show gratitude for the mentoring relationship. Maybe there's some celebration period as well. And this is a nice phase because it's also a way to reflect on accomplishments and determine those next steps. But all of these phases are important. They're important for both the mentor and the mentee to communicate openly and reflect on progress and adjust as needed. This is um, a dynamic relationship, as we know mentoring can take. So for your organizations, you have missions and visions that are important in the world, empowering scientists, educators, and practitioners, making a better world through conservation and wise use of natural resources, maintaining and improving the environment, um, making sure that we foster knowledge and practices to sustain global soils. This is also these are very important missions. And so the overall DEI statement is that we envision a scientific community where every person, regardless of their background and challenges, is able to explore their potential. And there's ways here that through scientific growth, professional growth, empowering, engaging, and cultivating the advancement of all. So what does that look like? The advancement for all. I went and looked at some data of the membership demographics, and for 2021, which was when this survey was conducted, we can see here the male, female, or I should say the man and woman, non-binary, the gender membership, and what that looks like. And we know that that it looks more even in the US population. We can also look at the race and ethnicity, how your membership identified, and we can see that in the general population, Hispanic and Black and African American citizens or US population is a lot more than in your organizations. And so there's some things to consider here. But questions that, as a humanistic researcher, that I ask are important. For example, who benefits from the research or the work that I do? And as a mentor, I ask the same questions. Who's benefiting from the mentorship that I provide? Who is harmed? And so I want to share with you some questions, some critical questions to consider, because this is important. Our demographics, who comes to our organizations, who are members, who participates, it's going to be key for going back to, why it's important to our solutions, our innovations, and the inclusion of others within these populations. And there might be also some unintended consequences too that we might consider from not including everyone at the table. So these questions that I ask often in my own research, or when I critically look at others' research, is who stands to gain the most from the research or the program? What are the benefits, or are the benefits distributed equitably? Are there any groups or individuals who might be negatively impacted? Whose perspectives are being considered in design and implementation phases? Who are left out? How do existing power structures influence who benefits and who is harmed from our work? And what are those potential long-term effects of the solutions on different populations? And so we engage with these as critical researchers to think about how our work might, without us knowing, be impacted. And so we bring in inclusive mentoring to think about how we can improve many different areas: improving recruitment, improving retention, developing the skills of those that are already members and transferring that knowledge, making sure that we have representation at the leadership ranks and developing those leaders, and having more engagement for everyone. And so this helps all of our members to be included. So then I want to pause again and ask you a different question. Have you ever been harmed by the actions or inactions of a mentor? And I put a mentor in quotes because perhaps this was a person who was assigned to be your mentor, or maybe started to be your mentor, and then maybe something went wrong. And so there are in our research some things that are barriers to inclusive mentoring. And so I'll briefly highlight what those are. There's obviously power differentials. We are perhaps at different stages in our career, and our powers are differ. And so sometimes when there is a dysfunctional mentoring relationship, there's distress that is caused by these power differentials. And that looks very different in different ways. There's also microaggressions. The way that we speak, the things that we do, sometimes either consciously or unconsciously might make someone feel bad. So for example, if someone says, oh, I don't see color, everybody's the same. I look at the skills of someone. Well, that is color blindness is denying the unique experiences of a group, of an entire group of minority status. So I know, for example, when I walk in a room, people look at who I am. They look at how I appear or how I identify socially. And so those microaggressions can look very different. So for example, if someone says, where are you from? You speak really good English, or you speak English really well. That might send another microaggression that says you are not from here. And I noticed, right? It's a micro invalidation. And so there's different ways that we can become aware of how we're speaking to others. Some other things to consider are, for example, not advocating. When we don't advocate for those that are marginalized, that are struggling to be included, that can create battle fatigue. And battle fatigue is when we're tired of trying to prove ourselves or trying to show that we belong. In your survey, that in the report, the DEI report, there was a quote by a person. They didn't identify their gender, but it said, too often the person or people who are treated poorly have to advocate for themselves, and too often they have to teach the rest of the world. Unfair, exhausting, and causes more of the problems of struggle for them. So this quote, it was important to notice that battle fatigue is a barrier to being included. And in inclusive mentoring, we can help to bring those on the margins to the center. And so relationship is the medicine to help us heal and grow. This is what keeps people in our field, is relationships. And so how is it that we can build relationships? First, I want to emphasize that we need to start with ourselves. We need to reflect upon our own positionality and how it impacts the decisions we take. Self-analyzing that identity and how these position me to be an advocate for others is important. And also practicing cultural humility. This is also important to thinking about how our backgrounds can impact how we act, and being aware, building this awareness. Proactively seeking allies, opportunities to be an allies are also important, and constantly thinking about how we can be better at our mentoring. So here is an example of one way to practice our reflexivity, or think about our social identity. And social identity is very much dependent on the context, on the time and the space that we are in. And on the top, you'll see this is an example of my reflection as a mentor that is an assistant professor. So there are some positives, right? I can be a positive change agent for the people that I mentor at my university, but I also don't have a lot of power without tenure. And so that sometimes might limit me. And these first two phases are important to think about how we identify socially. And then second, how our position impacts our life. So the blue is the tier 1 and the purple is the tier 2. But often very difficult. So in my research, I have found that for graduate students, for example, it's sometimes very difficult to think about how it makes them feel. How do these privileges make them feel? And so that's at the red line. So you can see there that there is some I feel that a sense of social responsibility, but I also feel a need to be well informed if I want to be a positive change agent. And I also feel the need to be protected because I don't have power without tenure. I also feel that this is an opportunity to grow. So thinking about our own social identity can help us to be more impactful and inclusive mentors. And so the other things that we can do is we can set clear expectations. We can acknowledge our mistakes and teach our mentees how to learn from them and continue learning about ourselves and about our proteges. Another thing to consider when setting expectations is to create a document collaboratively that includes expectations, goals, milestones, the communication expectations, and even an inclusivity statement or philosophy. I've included some of these in my REU programs, the research experiences for undergraduates, with questions such as, "This is what I would like you to know about me," and I would I fill this out, and my mentee also fills this out. Or these are the questions that I have for you. And so I have the opportunity to ask my protege questions, and they have the opportunity to ask questions. We fill this out separately, and then we discuss together. We talk about it together, and we get to know each other at the beginning of the relationship. But this document, when you create expectations, it could be a dynamic document, it could change. You can come back to it and look at it to see where we are in this mentoring relationship. And three things I want to highlight is that we've also learned that scaffolding the experiences helps to build confidence in our proteges. And what that is, scaffolding is when we break those things down further. So when a protege maybe is not doing something well, we can break things up into small, manageable steps. And at each step, we give feedback and we try to be positive and help foster their independence. Involving peers in this process is very important as well, because sometimes proteges are more comfortable with peers, and so being able to reach out to others is important. And finally, just being available. We have found that not being available actually can be detrimental. And so this is my final slide, and I do want to say that there are other considerations, of course. There's informal mentoring, there's coaching and peer mentoring, reverse mentoring. I've talked more about formal mentoring, but we need a network of mentors, and we need to be able to have, as well as provide or sustain, a psychologically safe environment. And that involves everybody, both proteges and mentors. And so with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share some of our research that we have done, as well as some of the workshop materials that we have presented at our trainings. And so with that, I believe there might be some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Vilma. What a great presentation. It really resonates with me too, especially considering the fact that my initial career was in agronomy and I had to switch to education to get another degree, and how I wished I had a mentor to help me through. So this is so personal, and I'm sure that our 100+ guests here are going to learn something. We have some great questions here, and time permitting, we'll be able to go through. The very first one that one of our participants has asked is, do the same principles apply to informal mentoring relationship? You mentioned formal and informal, and I see that your presentation was mostly on formal. So they're asking that what you shared, would it be the same, or would you have some best practices for informal mentoring, considering that that is what we encounter most of the time?
Yes. And so there are some things that we need to consider as well. So especially when we talk about like the different phases that we have, we need to think about how we're going to be helping others that are our mentor, or that are our mentees. So I'll give you an example. If a student says, can you help me with finding an internship? Uh, then that could be more of a coaching. It could be something that a mentor does, but it's a very short period of time. But it is still important to set the expectations, what it is that they need, by when do they need it, how often do they want to meet. And we often just say yes a lot of the times because we want to help our proteges. But it is important to consider if we have the resources and time to do that. So some of those stages, especially for formal mentorship, can be helpful in informal mentorships so that we can set some boundaries.
Thank you. The next question here is, could you try to clarify the difference between mentoring and coaching?
Sure, absolutely. So mentoring is going to be a little different than coaching. So coaching, I mentioned that, or I should mention that coaching is when you want to build a certain set of skills. So if I want to be a better writer, if I want to be a better presenter, I might coach someone on how to do it. And coaching is part of the mentoring relationship, but it doesn't, coaching could be a one-time thing where, I sit down, I coach a student or, someone to do a certain skill, and then that's it. The relationship might end there. They're grateful for it, but it doesn't continue on to other areas. And mentoring is a lot more holistic. We think about helping the student or the protege develop and connect in their networks in different ways. And building skills or coaching could be a piece of it, but it's not, it doesn't end when the skill has been completed.
Thank you. Another question here again has to do with mentoring relationship. Can you share some examples of harmful mentoring relationships, and if possible, how to recover from them?
Um, Sorry, the question was
Some examples of harmful mentoring relationships.
harmful mentoring relationships. Absolutely. So in my research with undergraduate researchers, one of the most harmful things that can happen is when uh, a, a mentor is not available to the students. This is this can be very harmful because they have to stop their progress on their research. They cannot go further. They have questions, and it starts to deteriorate their self-efficacy or their confidence in being able to do the work. And so being available is very critical. Um, Another thing that could be harmful could be, like I mentioned, some of those microaggressions are very harmful to students, especially, when a mentor says like, "Oh, you're very good at doing this. I don't know a lot of women who do this well." It creates some distance. It's this othering, right? That you belong, or that maybe they believe that they have certain beliefs about the potential that your identity has or has not. And so that those are very, very harmful. And how to overcome some of these, so these are just two examples, but how to overcome them are just to be open and reflective. And this is why reflecting often is going to be important, and thinking about, for example, did I respond the right way? How can I make that, how could I respond the next time? So being able to correct the mistakes, but also owning them and being able to go to the protege and say, I made a comment. I recognize I made this comment and it was probably not appropriate. Um, and so that is one, those are some ways to overcome it. One other way that I would say is to surround yourself with people that will be honest with you. So I have a mentor, and my mentor asks me, "Can you please tell me when I have, messed up, or when I am not coming off confident? Please, I value your opinion." And so being able to let people know that it's okay um, to quote unquote call you out, right? To say when you have made some mistakes is very important, and that takes time. It takes trust, and it takes having an environment that is open to communicating these quote unquote mistakes. I don't want to call them mistakes because we can learn from them, but they're important to be talked about openly.
Yeah, if I might add on to that, so thinking about being intentional to learn, and your presentation just shows us a lot of principles, ideas that we can learn from, and we really cannot know those things until we are intentional. Something like microaggression is just a lot to learn. Stereotype, how to know diversity, to know the different people. I really enjoyed your first slide on presenting your identity, who you are, right? And so just being open to learning, these things, we cannot be good mentors until we are open to learning. So another question
Absolutely.
here is for you is where to draw the line with mentor being professional and personal.
Yeah, that's sometimes that goes into the ethics of a mentoring relationship, and it's very important to always remain professional, to always, be clear on the boundaries. But we also have to inject who we are, our identities, right? And so that is going to be, so for example, I bring my family to events, I introduce them to my mentees. I am not hiding these personal aspects of who I am, but I'm being open that I am a human being and I have other elements of my life. Um, but it's always about thinking about the ethical, about what is right for someone who is forming in their formation stages or their development stages, and being available to them in appropriate ways. So you set the boundaries, and that's where we say we set expectations, because everybody has different expectations. So for example, I might be okay sharing my cell phone with others, with my proteges, so that they can contact me in case of an emergency. Others may not be comfortable with that. And so it's understanding ourselves and what we are comfortable with, and making sure that we have those boundaries, and and still be ourselves, still project exactly who we are, and not have, you shouldn't have to hide your mistakes, because they're part of who we are as well. And
Yeah,
yes.
some challenges there of inclusivity. And I have a question here where one of our participants ones would appreciate advice about being available as a mentor when you really feel overextended, just because there are people there who are looking forward to support, and because you have others, your colleagues, who are not stepping up. And there is struggle to set boundaries to protect oneself, knowing the need of mentees. So, do you have any advice? I know you
Yes,
mentioned that.
absolutely. Yeah, so as a female, for example, I might have uh, students who approach me to be their mentor. and a lot of it is coming from female students. But many times I try to say, okay, I try to compartmentalize, is this like a formal mentoring relationship that they want from me, or informal, or is this like an opportunity to coach or connect them to resources? And so it doesn't need to be an extended mentoring relationship. I think people come to us sometimes for small, like, how do I do this? Or, what can I do here? And so it's important to be able to distinguish between them so that we don't feel extended. And if there are ways to connect them to resources, if we know people, so for example, if the administrative assistant is really helpful, you can make that connection and help the student in that way, and listen to them and just connect them to the right resources. Because I do think that there is a great need, but we also need to protect our time. And so being able to say, okay, this is an opportunity to do a connection to resources, or coach them through this, and then that's it. It doesn't have to continue. I think that's how you can protect your time.
Thank you, Dr. Velma, for this great presentation. And if you would want to just close it up with one closing remark, and then we'll come to the end of our presentation here. What do you have to share as a closing statement for us?
Absolutely. I just want to, again, going back to the vision of mentoring, that we want to take the whole person into account and not omit pieces of that make them who they are. And so that's very critical. And it's also critical for us as mentors to also bring our whole selves into the mentoring relationship. And that means being aware of all of our identities and experiences, and reflecting often. So it's a very good tool to help us grow personally and professionally.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. And before I turn it over to Susan Chapman here, I would like to thank all our participants again, and want to tell you to watch out for our next webinar that is still going to be in the series of professional development in DEI. It will be coming up sometime in January, specifically January 9th, and it's going to be on field work safety. So very, very kind of like connected to what we are doing. So thank you everyone again. And more important, thank you, Dr. Velma, for this wonderful presentation. Susan, over to you.
Wonderful. Yes. And again, thank you, Dr. Karina Vielma, for your presentation. This is a reprise of her presentation at the annual meeting at our DEI Summit. So we appreciate her being able to join us and to share this important information more broadly. And thank you all for joining us. And please watch for a follow-up survey on the webinar. And again, as Comfort mentioned, watch for emails on our next webinar on fieldwork safety. Thank you, everyone.